Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. I'm so excited to have Brian Kurtz with us today. I got to know Brian through Genius Network, which is run by Joe Polish. Brian is a force to be reckoned with. He's had two careers that have both been amazing. First career was 34 years. He was the guy behind Boardroom Inc., the iconic publisher and direct marketer. And his second career, which he's now almost 6 years into, is as founder of Titans Marketing. It's a direct marketing educational and coaching company. And Titans Marketing happens to have a mastermind, which I'll be speaking at next week. And he's got this Titans Accelerator group as well. So essentially like two mastermind groups. He's the author of Over Deliver, Build a Business for a Lifetime, Playing the Long Game in Direct Response Marketing. There's a bunch of great bonuses, by the way, at overdeliverbook.com, so do check out that. And he's also author of The Advertising Solution, which profiles 6 legends of advertising and copywriting, including Gene Schwartz, David Ogilvy, and Gary Halbert. It can be found at thelegendsbook.com, and again, with lots of cool bonuses. As a business-to-consumer marketer of Boardroom, Brian was responsible for selling over $1 billion worth of products, $39 at a time, to millions. Impressive stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show, Brian.
Oh, thanks, Stephan. And I'm psyched that you're going to speak at the mastermind because you're a force to be reckoned with as well. And I'm so glad we met. And now that I know you've interviewed, Jay Abraham and Dan Kennedy and Seth Godin, I'm like, I feel like a slouch, but I'll hold up my end of the bargain as best I can. But those are all great friends of mine as well, and it's wonderful. I mean, this is a great podcast, so I really appreciate being here.
Oh well, thank you. And yeah, you have a career or two careers that are really impressive. You've taught a lot of people the craft of direct mail, of advertising, of copywriting, and some online stuff too. You're doing pretty well in the online world as well. So let's start with direct mail, where you kind of got your big foothold.
That's where I cut my teeth, right?
Yeah. So what would be something that would make direct mail relevant to a diehard internet marketer who's never sent a direct mail piece ever in their life? What would be a tidbit, some nugget that you could share with them that might convince them that they're missing out?
Yeah, my idea is that advertising opportunities are now infinite. So as opposed to when I was doing direct mail in the 80s and 90s, it was sort of finite. You had direct mail, you had print, you had TV and radio, package inserts, but it wasn't a lot of media. So direct mail ruled the day. And so chapter 3 of my book, in Over Deliver, I have a chapter that says why paying postage made me a better marketer. And I'm not saying that everybody should do direct mail. I don't even recommend it to most people. I think email marketing is the killer app right now, and everything kind of feeds off email. Even if you're doing search like you do, you still want to have a way to get people onto your list and email them. But direct mail is still viable in a big way. First of all, and for obvious reasons, which is the least crowded inbox is the one you grew up with, not the one that's on your computer. You go out to the end of your driveway, and especially during the COVID period, it's even emptier. So how can you get, and that doesn't mean that you just throw anything into direct mail, but if you really think about it, you can get people's attention much easier because it's emptier, but also you can do something very creative to sort of take it to the next level. So that's one reason alone. But not every business lends itself to it. But if you're a digital marketer, you have to realize that you're probably selling credit card only. You're not doing a bill me per se. We used to do bill me's in direct mail, which you can do also easier than you can do online. I'll tell you about that in a second. But the key is that you can basically go out to customers because you have their postal address because you've sold through credit card. And so you've got this incredible postal list that most don't use. And the funny thing is that list is an opt-out list. That's another big benefit of direct mail. It's not opt-in. With an email, you got to get them to opt-in, double opt-in to be safe. Direct mail doesn't work that way. Direct mail, until told differently by the powers that be in the government, you can basically send direct mail to people until they say stop. They have to, and it's not that you want to abuse them. It's just that that's the rule. You get their postal address. If they, there is a do not mail list that's handled by it was started by the Direct Marketing Association, so people can get on that list, and then you have to suppress them once they do that. But it's an opt-in. The other thing is that direct mail, a big bonus is that, as I said, you can do a bill me offer, because you can basically get your direct mail names and you can take a suppression file of people who are bad debt, for example. So you could have and there are bad debt files that are available in direct mail all over the place. So you can decide what's a bad debt to you. Someone who's stiffed somebody 2 or 3 times, run that against the list that you bring in, and don't mail them because they're high risk. Now you're mailing a much better list, which is already targeted, hopefully, and then you're going to get a much better pay up when you don't ask them to send you money, which is unheard of, basically, in the online world. You have to get your money up front. I mean, they have the hard bill me's in online where you can, give you credit card, we won't charge you for 30 days. That's sort of like a send no money, but I'm talking about send no money. I mean, at Boardroom, we used to do a lot of book marketing, and these are big, thick books, and we would send them out after we sent a very expensive direct mail package, send them a book, no money. On the book, there was an envelope which had the invoice, and based on the pre-mailing stuff that we did to take out the bad debt, take out the bad addresses, we got basically anybody who responded would pay it anywhere. If it was a house list, they pay it over 70%. If it was an outside list, they pay it over 60%. And we even do installment billing, where you can do installment billing really easily. And the beauty of direct mail is that people who pay the first installment will, like 90% will pay installments 2 and 3. And then also people who get that first bill will pay it in full anyway at 70%. So there's just so many advantages of direct mail in terms of the pre-mailing, the response rates. And the fact is, in the 1980s and 90s, we used to get response rates anywhere from 2% to 5%. And today, I would say that the response rates are equal to what we used to get. The difference is that the universe of names that are available in direct mail, because everything's gone online, so direct mail is they're not mailing as much. So, you have to go to these databases to mail a combined list of a lot of different lists. And it's a lot more difficult to get scale and universe to mail. But I would say that when you mail the right list in direct mail, you're going to get the same response rates that we've always gotten, even at the higher cost that we have for postage and printing. So I'd say there are a lot of advantages, but I also would not say to an online marketer, you have to be in direct mail. You have to do direct mail first. In fact, I rarely would recommend that. I would recommend, Facebook to a PDF to an email, and then decide what you want to do with your product. Because the beauty of direct mail as well is that you want to have physical product. Everything online, if it's a digital product, it's in the ether. So you're going to get paid for it and you send it, no cost. Once you do direct mail, you're really not going to really sell a digital product in direct mail. Usually it's a physical product of the digital. And once you can create a great physical product, I did a consulting job for an online marketer of a great program, and they actually it's all digital, and they were able to create a physical version of their program. So they had everything digital, and they created a DVD of the movie, they created CD interviews, they created a workbook, so it was a big physical package. And once you have that, then you're talking that direct mail is certainly worth testing, and it doesn't overlap that much, believe it or not. People obviously buy in both, but there'll be a new universe for you in direct mail to complement what you're already doing online. So there's a lot of quick reasons, but you shouldn't ignore it, and as Joe Polish and I did an interview and it was like, I think it was something like, everybody's going right, time to go left. And so, direct mail is like, it's brand new for some people. In fact, I went to Digital Marketer. I asked if I could speak at TNC on this new medium called direct mail, and I don't think they appreciated it because they didn't take me up on it. But I'm friends with them though. In fact, Roland Frazier is speaking at our mastermind where you are speaking, so that'll be really
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
So I'm not a Luddite. I'm not a I don't mind taking questions on direct mail because it's what I did for 20 years, and I have mailed well over 1 billion pieces of direct mail. Not personally, it was done at a letter shop, and I didn't lick every stamp and all of that. But with me and my team at Boardroom, we really did mail tremendous quantities, and if we mailed that many, the targeting that we did, the list segmentation we did was phenomenal. And everything online that can mirror that is great. I mean, you look at what Ryan Levesque does with, his quiz funnels, his ask funnels. It's basically, it's list segment. It's a great program. I love Ryan. And it's basically list segmentation on steroids because he can create different messages for different buckets. And that's what it's all about. I mean, in direct mail, we couldn't even do that because if you have 5 different segments, 5 different control packages in direct mail, it's going to get too costly because you got to separate them in zip streams and there's postal issues and all of that. There's no excuse to mail one email does not fit all on the list. So, lists are people too, and you can segment them a certain way and different messaging. I mean, even just, buyers versus prospects should get a completely different email series. You have a buyer, you want to sell them more, but you also want to treat them as VIPs. The prospects, you also want to treat like VIPs. I think your list is always people, so it's always your family, but you can do different things. And that's the obvious one. But then, you have multi-buyers, you have people who bought a different combination of products that should get, and then there's RFM, which is recency, frequency, monetary value, which is, how people behave in the mail or online.
Yeah,
and
we'll get to that. I definitely want to get into that. But
that was I got rid of direct mail, right?
Yeah. So I want to touch on one thing you said is you could take a digital product and create a physical version of it, and you were mentioning like CD interviews, a DVD of the movie, and that sort of thing, and the digital version of me or whatever is screaming no, like that's old school, that's like who even knows how to put a CD in their CD player anymore? I don't even have a computer that has a CD player or even a DVD or DVD player. And so if and I'll just give you an example of just a brilliant direct mail campaign that stuck with me. I saw it as a Marketing Sherpa case study like 20 years ago, and it was just so innovative at the time. I just had to make a note of it, and I've mentioned it a couple of times on this podcast. But the idea is that if you were, let's say, a marketing director or marketing VP, and you get this direct mail piece, and it's let's say it's a tough time, like recession time, or this was actually back in the time of the .com bust. Okay, so you get this direct mail piece, and it's kind of oversized letter, partially translucent, and you can see that it's got a song sheet. And the title you can also make out without opening the letter yet. And the song is titled "Let's All Blame the Marketing Director." And you're the marketing director at the company. I thought that was pretty darn genius. And as you open it, you see there's a reply card in there, and the song, it's an actual song sheet. You could play it on the piano. It was a barbershop quartet song that they had commissioned and made the song, and then they offered the CD of it if you sent the reply card. And they've made some very big deals. This was an agency that pulled this off. They signed some very big deals because of that. Really, really clever.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. I agree with you that DVDs and CDs and workbooks and all that stuff it's all old school for sure. However, there are ways to still, first of all, there's still a lot of people that, everybody's living longer. So, there's a lot of people who are 50 plus now that are not averse to that kind of technology. But more so, like what you're talking about, if they can I'm using USBs. Now there are Macs now, you don't even have a USB port. So it's going to, it's even tough for that. But I'm putting a lot of content on USBs, and you put it in a plastic case with a table of contents. It becomes physical product, because physical product and certainly books and workbooks are old school, but books are still a perfect product, whether you like it or not. So there's still an advantage for perceived value in creating a physical product. And if you can do physical product and digital at the same time, it gives the people a chance. So if you have a high price product, like an investment online product, and I've seen this, they will do a physical version, whether, again, it could be DVDs, it could be on USB, it could be on CDs, but you have it in both. And it's just, I think it adds tremendous, and also books. And it does add a perceived value. You have to be careful, with the audience. I think that, but I do think that when I go to a new client, I usually get the people around the table, and I pick the youngest person. So usually it's a woman, and she's in her early 20s. And I say to her, do you know what a mailbox is? And she looks at me like I'm an asshole, which is fine. And then she says, and then I say, so you know what it is, and do you check your mailbox like what, once every 2 weeks? She goes, no, I check it every day. And then I started talking about the idea of personalized direct mail. That is, if you got a lumpy package or a box or something in your mailbox that was hand addressed, and it looked like something that wasn't a bomb, and it was interesting, that you would you open that before you got into your house to go back on email, or would you open it quickly? And of course, she has to admit that she'd open it first and immediately. Yeah. So that's the obvious way I get them into the discussion of, there's a lot of things you can do on the back end of a digital business. So I know that there are some digital companies. I know one guy sells tennis instruction online, and what he did was it's all online, it's all on video. He sells great products, but he decided to come up with a playbook on some of the instruction, and it was basically, you send in and you get the playbook online, but then you get a workbook. It looks like a workbook, spiral bound, and you get that in the mail. And what it is that you throw this workbook in your tennis bag when you go out, and it has all the different positioning. It's like doubles positioning. And when you get on the court, you can, point your phone at it's got QR codes. You point it at the thing in the book, and it'll show you what to do in video. Well, but it also has it in the book as well. I mean, that was a great way to do online, offline, if you want to do it. I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but the workbook itself, the playbook, became a great addition to the product. And I think you can charge higher prices when you start using physical product. And again, I hear you on DVDs and CDs and USBs, and I happen to have a PC, so I do have a DVD player, I do have a CD player, and I do have 2 USB ports. So I feel like I'm lucky to have those. But some people say I don't want them, but that's not going to be the audience for you. And then but again, making it available to certain segments, I think it's all about getting the most penetration into your list in terms of what people want, meet them where they are, and then give it to them the way they want it. And so I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that there's still a tremendous use for direct mail, physical product, and books and workbooks and things like that. I sent you The Brilliance Breakthrough,
yes,
which was a great book by Gene Schwartz. And there were exercises in the book. I don't know what Gene was thinking at the time, but he was a great copywriter. He has this classic book, The Brilliance Breakthrough. And at the end of the chapters, he has these exercises. And I'm thinking to myself, why would anybody want to write in a collectible book? The book wasn't even available until I brought it back, and there were copies of it for $2,000 on Amazon and eBay. So I'm thinking to myself, why would I buy a book, even though I was charging $195 for it? Why would I want to write in the book? So then I created a workbook which has all the exercises. And I think just the fact that there's a workbook, increases the perceived value of the book and the workbook, because, it's more, more is better. I mean, in what we did in direct mail at Boardroom, like we would have like our Bottom Line yearbook, for instance, we sold every year, which was Bottom Line Personal was our big newsletter. We created a yearbook for it. And I remember the control package for that yearbook was, 4 reports, and you get 4 special reports, and the special reports it's bonuses, and they come with the book when you buy it. Then the copywriter had this great idea. Why not do, 10 special reports? And we said, great. And of course, 10 beat 4 by a wide margin. Then he said, let's do 50 special reports. So 50 beat 10 by a wide margin, and it didn't cost us much more, because the 50, while they were laid out in the direct mail package as individual little reports, because they were all like 2 or 3 pages each, but they were on one single topic. We put it all in one volume. So it was still like one book with 50 special reports. And that led to 100 special reports, which beat 50 in one book. And what that did is that now you've got a direct mail piece that has the 100 special reports fanned out with all the different titles. And each one of those titles, one's on blood pressure, one's on finance in tough times, one is, bonds versus equities, one is on, how to make sure that you don't get the best alarm systems for your home, because Bottom Line was a big consumer newsletter. And each one of those become touch points for different people. So you don't have to touch everybody with all 100, but you can touch, everybody with at least 5 to 10, maybe even more than that. So that became like an incredible, it just was like more was better, and it was still physical product. So, I mean, those are some examples of using, premiums to add. And those are all books, no CDs, no DVDs. So, I'm not getting defensive about that, but I'm just giving you other ways to create physical product, because CDs and DVDs are not the answer for certain audiences. I agree.
Yeah. And the workbook example you gave of the tennis instructor, that would lead to so many additional brand impressions if they're bringing that with them in their bag that goes to the tennis court every time. That's going to make that brand top of mind. That person is going to be a go-to source for more tennis information.
Yeah, and he already was. I mean, he was already the number one guy, and now he's still expanding his universe, which is great. I thought it was fantastic. In fact, he and I spent some time on the phone before he did it to talk about how he should send it out. I suggested you send it out first class, priority mail, because at that point you got people spending, $1,000 or so, or maybe even $500 on the course. What's an extra? I mean, you really have to do the customer service on the back end as well. Direct mail for me, I made the comment that I sold, $1 billion worth of business at $39 at a time. That's tough. You're selling subscriptions and books. I was doing it because I wore that like a badge of honor, not because I was smart. I wasn't doing Ascension. I wasn't doing higher priced products. So, I was silly at the time when you think about it, but we did okay.
You did okay.
But he's, but it's way easier to ascend people from, $39 to $500 to $1,500 coaching to $25,000, masterminds and all of that. But I do think that when you add in again, direct mail doesn't have to be 1 billion pieces, $39 at a time. It can be a companion to $1,000 or $2,000 product that's digital, and then you make the presentation of that product so amazing because you got all this money to work with. So you got not to waste your money, but you can put it in a box. You can send it Federal Express. if the people had paid a lot of money. I mean, what a great thing to tell somebody that they bought a $2,000 course or a $5,000 course for that matter, and they got the digital and they downloaded it, and then they get this welcome thing in the mail. I mean, that is unbelievable, that it's just a surprise and delight. And as long as the stuff in the box doesn't have to be a representation of the digital product, but it's got to support it. And I think, now with COVID, I'm sure you've been hearing about all the virtual events that are taking place that were live events. And one of the biggest things that we're doing is creating a swag boxes for those events, and they're Federal Expressing them. And I heard I was on a conference call, and somebody describing this, and they couldn't believe that they sent out 3,000 swag boxes of all kinds of books and stuff, and they sent it Federal Express. And they said, how could you spend that much money? Well, wait a minute. We used to do a live event at a hotel where we're paying food and beverage, we're paying for the room, we've got thousands of dollars that we were spending. The money that we spent on the FedEx boxes didn't come close to approaching that. And it added to the event, it added to the having people stay online longer, which is what you want to do if you have an enrollment kind of online event. And the online events have been, they've been really kicking butt. They've been doing great. And I'm not saying they're going to replace live events, but a lot of them, in some cases they are, or they're going to complement them in the future.
Right.
And it's the physical product that supports it that helps a lot. And you just use the money differently. That's all.
Yeah. I'm in strategic coach, and it was a virtual day-long event, of course.
Right.
And we just had it, but they sent the box with what was it, like
Dan's new book?
Yeah, so books and things like that. But the thing that was special and different, and I thought very clever, was microwave popcorn. Not that that's healthy or anything, but microwave popcorn and a popcorn box, one of those red and white striped boxes that you pour the popcorn in after you've popped it in the microwave. That was really a nice touch.
Nice touch.
Yeah.
Yes. I was just going to say, we're for the mastermind. Spoiler alert. I don't know. I don't know if we'll get it to you in Israel before the meeting, but we're sending some books, including yours, but we're also sending. We always did, snack bags. So we're sending, certain snacks in there, and the one of the things we're doing is sending an Uber Eats card for $100 to everybody who's coming, because there'll be a lunch break, but the lunch break is going to be different. If you're on the West Coast or you're in Israel, whatever, it's like it's a span of, you'll be ready for, a bedtime snack when we're doing, like, you know what I mean? But I think the Uber Eats card is a nice touch.
It is a nice touch.
Yeah. I love the popcorn with the box. It just says that if you were live, you would be getting this, because we do get popcorn at Strategic Coach.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. I like anything you can do to be creative. One of the things they're doing for the virtual events is that they're sending the box, they're sending a book, they're sending a workbook, but then they send like smiley faces on a stick, because everybody's audio is off, and you got these big screens of 500 people. And then, like, you could, the speaker or the moderator can say, did anybody get that? Can you respond? And then you see all the they're all like, waving the smiley faces. And, it just gets, because I tell you, speaking at a virtual event is tough because you can't feed off the crowd. It's just, it's very difficult. So that was a really nice touch that I saw too.
Yeah. Yeah. Roger Love just did his Voice of Success virtual, and his swag box included those emoji sticks. Right. Yeah. And he did something unprecedented. None of the other folks who Powered by Sage is the company that produced.
They're the best. That's Barry Baumgartner and Blue Melnick, right?
Yeah, they're fabulous. And Roger did something that no other client of theirs had done up until that point. He got everybody to unmute at the same time, and then he got them to sing along a song, and all these different exercises that he did with everybody off of mute. Not just one person, but everybody, 1,200 people off of mute at once.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy.
And then
Sage,
it worked. And then Sage fed off that, because last week I did Michael Rosbrook's event, which was for tax resolution guys, and it was 500 people, and they did a thing where they unmuted everybody at the same time. And I was wondering if he was the first, but no, he wasn't, because Roger Love did that first. Now, I mean, you got to be first, but it'll be copied. So it was.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool, when you and then you got to shut it off pretty quick, because then it gets cacophonous after a while. But It's really cool, because you got all these people who are just sitting there with their audio off, and they're really into it. I mean, they're staying online. They're usually very engaged, but as a speaker, you can't feed off it, so it becomes a little difficult. Yeah. So there's just so many. But again, it going back to what we started with here. It's the physical product that, and I think that when people do live events in the future, they're going to think about sending a swag box in advance with their badge and with some stuff, which they'll have to get, do something at the live event. But people don't want to carry books home and things like that. So now there's a way to, get them excited before a live event as well. And they got that because they had to do it because they were virtual. And so there'll be a lot of things that'll feed off of that. But it does come down to that direct mail is not mailing, 2 million names to sell a book at, 3% response rate. That's one kind of direct mail. But direct mail could be, 50 people to a mastermind with a package that is, costs, I don't know, $75 each. But it's just, showing that we can't do this live. So I want you to get as much experience as you can. And you can do that through the mail. Yeah. It's just fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. So I have a 1,000-page book that I can send digitally, and okay, that has some value to it. But if I send that in the physical mail and they receive that, it's got heft to it, right? And let's say that I highlighted different sections of it, or I had one of my team do that were relevant to that specific business and where they were at. That sends a whole other kind of message.
Are you doing that?
I'm thinking about doing it. Yeah, one of my coaches strongly advised me to do that. Even if it's $75 each to do that, it's worth it. Is what she reckons.
Right, I would recommend it too, but don't do everybody at once. Pick out some key clients that you're either going to meet with, or they haven't met you yet, but you think it's going to lead to that. That's about lifetime value. Yeah. Like if you get the appointment, and it's even if it's a paid appointment or a paid call or a consulting call, if you send that Federal Express or in a box, with some other stuff on the side, beef jerky and a Kind bar, which is what we did, but you've got the book as the centerpiece. I mean, your book's tremendous. I mean, not only in size but in scope, and I think it's the best book on SEO ever written. So and then I highlighting or tabbing. I mean, you could do it a lot easier. You could just, take Post-it notes and just put it in the book, so that it'll be really easy for them to find it. Or you can have a cover note saying pages, 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 and that's highlighted. But what a great, it's not just a gift. It's going to help them in working with you. And of course, it's got credibility built in, because this guy wrote a 1,000-page book on the subject. Who else has done that? The answer is nobody. So you've got a differentiation that takes you to a whole new level. I would say if you don't do that, I'll be very disappointed.
Okay.
But don't test it different ways, because you can do it. It's a one-off each one.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I would have recommended the same thing, but the coach beat me to it.
Yeah, it's Julie Mason, who is actually going to be another guest on this episode. I already recorded her interview, but yeah, she's my LinkedIn coach.
Oh, great.
Yeah, she's great at LinkedIn, but also just sales and strategy stuff too.
Yeah, you got to be to do LinkedIn. I mean, look, again, advertising opportunities are infinite. And the thing is, like, if someone is a LinkedIn expert, and they claim to be able to do everything on social media, everything online, I always say run away from that person. I want the best person on LinkedIn. I want the best person on Facebook. I want the best person on Instagram. They might overlap. I want the best person on SEO. I want the best person on I mean, that's what I do with my masterminds. I basically, and I said this to you at Joe when we met at Joe's, I said, okay, this guy is clearly the best SEO guy in the world. So that's who I want. I want the Watts for my mastermind. So if the Watt is SEO, I want Stephan. If the Watt is Facebook, I want Nicholas Kuzmich or somebody at his level. If the Watt is LinkedIn, I want your woman, or like I know Joshua Lee. Josh Lee is a tremendous expert on LinkedIn. So I if it's direct mail, I could do it, but I also know other experts like Craig Simpson and people like that, my co-author on Advertising Solution. But I want the what and the who. And this ties into Genius Network and Strategic Coach. I want the what and the who in any kind of marketing segmented area. And then the how, well, there's a lot of ways to do the how. You can do it yourself, you can do it with somebody, and I'll give you the who's to do it with. Yeah. So, I mean, I make no bones. If you're coming into my mastermind to speak on SEO, you could be the who, or you'll recommend a who if you don't want to be the who for them. But you'll give them the why. You'll tell them how to use SEO. And I have another speaker who's the expert on Amazon, Dylan Frost. He's like the number one guy on Amazon. He was selling wholesale. Now he's selling direct to consumer. And he's got it down to a system. He could buy white label product and put you on Amazon and run the whole program for you. Doesn't cost you a thing. He takes a percentage. Great guy. He's going to show you the what of Amazon. He could be the who, but if he's not the who, he'll give you a who, or you'll find one, but you know what the what and the who is before you do the how. Yeah. And that's like my whole, because I'm retired basically, because I've retired from things I don't like to do. I've retired from things I'm not good at, and I'm not good at a lot of things. And I've retired from people I don't want to hang around with anymore. That's Dan Sullivan's definition of retirement. But I love working. I love doing this. But I want to bring as much what and who to everybody in marketing and copywriting, so then they can go off and really just, multiply. I always say go forth and multiply. And that's how you do it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan has a book out now called Who, Not How.
Right.
Right. Because if you're trying to figure out the how, which I used to do a lot, right, instead of trying to find the right who to solve that problem, and they bring the how, I try to figure it out myself. And I'm well past that. Like when you said bring in specialists, and all these different social platforms, there's so many different specialists. So, for example, I have a specialist, a power user on Pinterest, and she got one of our clients, Everypedia, which is a competitor to Wikipedia but built on the blockchain, and it doesn't have it's an encyclopedia for everything, not just the stuff that's considered notable by Wikipedia standards. They got from 31 monthly viewers is where they started in October when we started working with them on Pinterest, to over 1 million by the month of June. 1 million monthly viewers. Wow. Yeah, and that was my power user. She's
right, because the
ninja at this stuff.
The Facebook expert isn't going to know how to do that as precisely as the person that spent all their time on Pinterest. Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach, he teaches, the who, not how, is a beautiful extension of the basic concept of Strategic Coach, which is unique ability. Mm-hmm. So if you're in your unique ability, my unique ability is so far from Pinterest, it's ridiculous. It's far from SEO. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And the thing though that I did for the tax reduction guys is what I said was, you don't have to be good at anything really. I mean, you're probably good at something because everybody knows everything about this much. And if this is only on audio, I'm holding my thumb and index finger 3 inches apart. Everybody knows everything about this much. But if you know if you're outsourcing your marketing, which you should for the most part, or have a marketing director or a CMO that's orchestrating this, you can't just dish it off and say do me to all these people. You have to basically at least understand what they're doing. If you're going to do Facebook, understand what they're doing, what you're paying for, where's the ROI. You got to ask the right questions. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to be involved. And I also look at this in terms of copywriting. If you're a copywriter, or let's say you're a marketer looking for a copywriter, I get emails all the time. Brian, do you know a good copywriter? I said, I know hundreds of good copywriters. That's not the right question. The question is, who's the right copywriter for you? And then you have to look at their business. You have to look at their category. You have to see, you want an A player or a B player. And a B player can still do the job, but a good copywriter, one of the first things they have to do is they have to be insatiable in their curiosity, which means they're usually the best interviewers. So, if you're the client, you probably know, and if you're passionate about what you're doing, you know more about what you're doing than anybody. You just don't know how to write about it or to write a compelling sales letter or email or direct mail package. The copywriter's job is to get it out of you, because they're gonna take what they get out of you and turn it into poetry, and with a CTA and a call to action and everything that is needed, which you don't have to do that, but you got to be involved. It's your business, it's your brand. And so that's what I told the tax guys. I don't expect them all to be marketers and copywriters, but they're at this event to learn marketing. You got to be involved, or forget it. Somebody's going to take advantage of you. You're going to pay $10,000 for a consultant, and after 6 months, you're going to say, "What did he do?" And it was nothing. Consultants. I always say, anybody asks me what I do for a living, I never say I'm a consultant. A consultant sounds like you're unemployed, and a consultant also is someone who, there's a lot more money to be made by perpetuating the problem than solving it. So,
yes, I've seen the motivational poster for that on despair.com. That's
despair.com. Right. Yeah. But, there are consultants and there are consultants. And, I know you're the kind of consultant that wants, you want people to get results. And Joe Polish says all the time, he says, everybody talks about thought leaders in the business. It's not a thought leader that you're looking for. It's a results leader.
Yeah.
And it's a big difference, because Joe puts it well. He goes, anybody can have a thought.
Yeah.
It takes a special person to be able to get results out of a marketer. Yeah. And that's what you want. But you have to be involved. I mean, it's not a non-participant sport, as a client, to not be involved in your marketing. Marketing, the title of my speech at that tax reduction thing was "Marketing Isn't Everything, It's the Only Thing." Off Vince Lombardi's "Winning Isn't Everything, It's the Only Thing." But it is everything, and not because I'm a marketing whore looking for every order and price gouging. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about being the worst of the worst in terms of selling and marketing. But if you're not going to be involved, then don't bother doing it. But then it comes down to who's, I have the what and the who before the how. And you got to know what the whats are. And we'll have a lot of whats at this mastermind with you and Dylan and Roland Frazier. And I have a fundraiser, Scott Harrison from Charity Water, and he's turned fundraising into a subscription model, and at a very high level. And that's one of the speakers as well. And
yeah, I saw that. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
I've heard him speak before. He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so let's switch into like a lightning round for the next 10 minutes or so, and see how many questions we can get through.
Okay.
So what do you think about so we talked about a swag box. What do you think is different about a shock and awe box, which is a term that I learned from Dan Kennedy?
Dan Kennedy, yeah.
So what makes that so special that your jaw drops when you open that?
I think it's a Venn diagram. I think a good swag box is shock and awe.
Okay.
I think. But the swag box, I consider that it's usually in support of something. Like it's basically And I look at the swag box now, and it's going to get this because of all the virtual events. It's going to move towards like direct marketing now. Is everybody says direct marketing, they think direct mail. Well, who decided that? I mean, direct marketing is still direct marketing in any medium, but I think it'll morph that way. And I think I think a swag box is going to start morphing to support an event. And a shock and awe is basically like sending your book with the highlights and all of that. To me, that's shock and awe. And you might just send the book, and that's got some shock and awe. But you can add things to that by putting tabs in the book or highlighting, and then add some things. Maybe there's another workbook, or there's another support, a USB with some more content that you put in the box. So a shock and awe. I mean, I knew a shock and awe box was. I knew a guy who was doing a mastermind or a live event for lawyers to come to this event, and then he was going to sell a mastermind at the event. So anybody who signed up and paid, he sent them like the wooden, it looked like a coffin, a small coffin, and it was like a big wooden box. And, you opened up the top, and it had, it wasn't a rifle or anything, but it had I think it had like a book here, and it wasn't so much to support, it was a combination of supporting the event and that's just shocking. I mean, a swag box is probably not going to be a wooden box with a lid and looks like, with an inscription on the top. I mean, that's shock and awe. I mean, so shock and awe is probably a little bit more than a swag box, but they overlap. And I think the more we go on with virtual events and I also think that shock and awe could be part of a direct mail program, like a continuity, because a swag box would be like maybe a one-time thing, but a shock and awe, you could have a shock and awe series. You could have, I know that you can do one, a mailing a month or maybe even every 2 weeks. And one of them, has a balloon in it, and you say, blow up your sales. And I mean, you can do corny stuff, but you can still do shock and awe that way. So it's an interesting question, but I don't think there's a lot more in common than not in common, I think.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I could imagine like if you're the kind of company that prints, or not print, but creates business cards that are made out of metal or wood or other kinds of specialized kinds of impressive, expensive business cards. If you sent a fancy box with some samples that were kind of mounted or something, I'm just totally riffing here. I don't know if anybody's done this, but that would be really impressive if I received that and I have the funds to be able to afford those kinds of expensive business cards. I do believe in really nice business cards. My business cards cost I don't know, $1.50 each, right?
Wow.
Which it's not inexpensive, but it's got spot UV, it's printed on both sides, color, and it's got a picture of me, and it's pretty slick. And
that's like new school from old school.
Yeah. Well, I learned this from actually from pickup artists. There's this concept called the DHV, the demonstration of higher value. If you just weave into a conversation with somebody like, oh yeah, when I was dating that supermodel, what happened was this crazy thing, and da-da-da-da, you just nonchalantly dropped into the conversation that you were dating a supermodel at one point.
Right.
You don't have to brag then. It's just part of the storytelling. It's very clever. So that's something that pickup artists do a lot. So a DHV could be the form of a really nice business card. Right? I remember receiving metal business cards from folks, and
I've gotten them.
It's just really impressive. That was a $5 business card they just handed me.
Yeah, the only problem with those is I remember putting it in my pocket and I cut my leg on it, but outside of that, it was a little sharp. I mean, you have to be careful with that, but it was impressive. You didn't want to throw it out. I mean, and that's what the main thing with the business card. I mean, business cards can get tossed all day. The thing about another shock and awe that I know of, there's a guy in my mastermind who sells like plaques and to Walmart. employee of the month plaques, and he gets an account from a big chain, and he can do plaques for all their employees. And he would send a lot of times to a good prospect, he'd do the plaque, like to the person he's sending it to, employee of the month for picking, taking my employees to do their plaques or something. And very clever stuff that you can do to really get them, to get them in tune with what you're doing. Because you can do a lot of stuff that's completely synergistic with what you end up selling, which is really great. And the business cards made me think of that.
Yeah, very cool. What kind of unusual packaging so that it gets past the gatekeeper and goes straight to the decision maker? What sort of innovations would you recommend there? Like we used to use FedEx tubes, for example. We'd send a pair of socks and a FedEx tube, and we'd have the cover letter explaining that we got this client Cabela's ranking #1 for wool hunting socks. So that definitely got past the gatekeeper, because how often do you receive a FedEx tube in the mail? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there was so much in third class mail back in the 80s and 90s that were like these fake DHL, but they were like, express things. And those were good back then. Actually, just sending something FedEx tells you that it's important. Yeah. So, anybody who's going to spend that extra money, whether or UPS 2-day air or whatever, and it's legit, that's good too. I think that customized boxes with, if they're sort of expecting it, I think that's important, to customize it in some way. I think odd shapes, as you said, a tube box, or I know that some people, the box, that had the lift, the lid, or sometimes you'll get we do plastic cases for our USBs, which in itself it's just not usual. I mean, anything that you can do that will create some real intrigue in what the mailer is. So the tube is one way, but you can basically just have a big package that has you put a lot of foam around it, and then the package itself is in an envelope, but it's such a strange shape that you have to open it.
Right. So that's Dan Kennedy's concept of a lumpy envelope, or a lumpy mailer.
Lumpy. Right. So lumpy is always good. But yeah, I think that, anything, with a gatekeeper situation, you really have to make it so that even the gatekeeper opens the Federal Express envelope and she looks in it, she's not going to not pass that along because it came FedEx and she doesn't know how important it is.
Yeah.
Now, some gatekeepers are better than others, and she'll open it, she'll see it's a book with a note clipped on. But even that, well, maybe he ordered this book, maybe, so as long as it's not, and sometimes it can't be FedEx for the sake of being FedEx. If it's FedEx with a single letter that's pre-printed, I don't know if that's that good, because that could be thrown out. So I think you want to if you're going to use that kind of format, you want to be consistent, and congruent through the whole thing. It's not, and there was an expression back in the 80s in Bob Stone's classic direct marketing book, and it was something about the gestalt of the mailing piece. And the gestalt would be, sometimes putting stuff that's not congruent in the piece. So let's say you're sending your book with an attached note, and there's a power bar in there and a T-shirt. Well, what is all this stuff? So I think that is part of the shock and awe, that it's sometimes not congruent. But I think when it is congruent to something, it sometimes follows the sales letter, the sales all the way through. But you can go a lot of different ways with, setting the package up. So, but I love the Cabela's socks in the tube. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Any particular suppliers that you like to work with, or that you recommend to do this kind of stuff, like creating the DVDs and doing the printing and the binding and all
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. I mean, the two that I work with the most are
Yeah,
DISC.com. They're in
disc.com.
like
Yep.
the Chicago area, and he's a member of Genius Network.
Hmm.
He does a lot of my. He's actually he ships all my books, Breakthrough Advertising, Brilliance Breakthrough. My USBs. He does those, so that's great. And then I have another guy in Rochester, New York. It's Selby Printing, and they do. I mean, they've printed. Well, they can buy anything and then package it. So I did these. I did a welcome package for my Titans Accelerator Mastermind, which is my 200-person online mastermind, and they would buy I wanted to do some diaries, leatherette diaries, so they bought that with an inscription. I gave them a copy of my book, and we had a USB in a plastic case, which they made, but they put the whole thing together. They mailed it. I mean, they can handle, and Disc can too, they can handle almost anything. There's also a company that deals with the Kennedy folks a lot. I think it's called 3D printing or something like that. It's 3D something. The guy's name, I think, is Travis Lee. And they're really good too. I mean, the thing is, I mean, for some of this stuff, you can just go, if you're just testing it for the first time, you can just go to a local printer for the most part. And if you're buying, basically what you need them to do is to understand the different shipping. You know, do you want to send a priority mail or just regular USPS, or do you want to send for international? Do you want to send it UPS expedited? So you have to know all the shipping numbers, and you want to know those numbers, because if you're sending it out, you want to know what your cost of goods are, what your postage is, and then you can look at this as a direct mail program over time, because everything's got to have an ROI. Direct marketing or direct response marketing is measurable and accountable advertising. You want to be able to get back eventually, not right away. You don't have to get your money back right away, but you want to get your money back over time. So I think, any company you deal with, they have to be very good about giving you all the costs, so you know everything you're spending and then how much you're going to get back from that. And you got to track it over a period of time. You can't just do 5 of them and say, I didn't get any response to this $75 thing. It's a disaster. I'm not going to do it again. I would think that's a mistake if you've got the right list, which is the most important thing. If you got the right list, then you should be able to figure out the offer and the creative to make that list work.
Yeah, you said you got to have the right list, and the list is the most important thing. It's more important than the copy. It's more important than the creative, the offer, all that.
It is, because, and I'm not saying that they're not all important. I did a presentation last year at LaunchCon where I talked about that the creative is the least important part of your promotion until it's not. And what that means is that it was based on the original 40-40-20 rule, which was it was something that someone put out. It's close, I'm sure, that the success of a direct marketing program depends 40% on the list, 40% on the offer, and 20% on the messaging or the creative. And I made that in my book. I made it the 41-39-20 rule, with 41 being the list. Just to know that the list, you've got to get the list right. Because if you have the best creative and the best offer, and the list is not targeted, they're not interested in what you're doing, you're going to get 0 orders no matter what you do.
So if you send let's all blame the marketing director piece to the CTO or the janitor, that's a big mess.
Exactly. So if you get the list right, you can have a mediocre offer. You could have creative that's a flashing red box with a flashing red arrow, and you'll get some orders. You'll make some money because the list is just so targeted. And if it's an affiliate, for instance, I mean, they're going to sell some of the stuff even with the worst creative, but that's when the creative takes hold. Because if you have a great list and a great offer, or an offer that's going to be incorporated into the creative, getting a great copywriter or a great person or people to create that messaging, that's going to take the marketing to a whole nother level. Because what I saw in all my marketing at Boardroom over 34 years, that I got lifts of anywhere from 5% to 10% to 20% maybe by tweaking a control and tweaking a sales letter and all of that. But when I got the 50% lifts and the 100% lifts on a control package, meaning I got 100% lift in response, it was always when I went to a brand new creative from a brand new copywriter with a whole different approach, with a new offer, new premiums, new bonuses, but the list was still the best list that I could get. So now I'm really playing in the right arena of really investing in the creative and the offer too, but the creative mostly, to make that the most important once you made the list the most important.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by the creative is the least important until it's not. And those are the three legs of direct marketing. It's list, offer, and creative, basically.
Right.
Everything else could come under one of those three things.
And one thing that really strikes me is you never hear the term in internet marketing, at least, beat the control. But that is the mantra for direct marketers and direct mail. So if we started thinking more in terms of beating the control, we're going to start creating campaigns that we can iterate and improve as time goes on, instead of just a one-off and just hope it works.
It's a good point. Really good point. I mean, my attitude is, the control is your enemy, So we used to think about it in direct mail. As soon as you got a new control, the idea was, now how are we going to beat that? Even though it was going to roll out, it was going to do well, and we're going to make a lot of money on it. We wanted to figure out, and the best copywriters know that if it's their package, whether it's direct mail, whether it's an email series or whatever, if they get the control, they're going to want to beat it themselves to keep the control, especially if they're getting a royalty or a percentage, of the sales. So it's always in your best interest. I think the reason why the term control is not as prevalent in online is because in direct mail, we used to do a package, we used to get the results, then you go out with the new control, the new control, you get a new control, and then you get a new package against it. That whole process could take 6 months. Now it's 15 minutes, but that's the danger, because then you have statistical significance that you have to keep in mind. And I'm sure you're a slave to this, like I've always been, which is, if you're gonna call something a new control, you better have more than like 6 more orders at $99. I remember at my first launch at Boardroom, we did an online launch, and we were testing like during the launch, because you can do that online. You can't really do that in direct mail. You got to print the thing. You got to pay postage. You got to send it to a letter shop. So they're doing this, and I remember that the guy who's running the test, like, even first it had to be an A/B split, and I wasn't sure he was doing an A/B split, meaning that every other name has to be in each segment of the split. You can't do the half the country here and the eastern part of the country here and the western part there, or whatever. So it got to be an A/B split. But he said, "Oh, we got two packages. It was a price test, and probably had more than one dimensional. It was probably a multi-dimensional test, which is not good either. But let's say it was just a price test." And he said, "This one, we got 9 orders. This one we got 12 orders, and the 12 orders was at the higher price, so that definitely won." And I'm thinking to myself, on a $99 product, are you kidding me? You got to get some scale here to tell you if it's a winner. I mean, that's just random almost. So that's another reason why, because I think online you want to make changes quickly, you want to move, you want to have a lot of dexterity, which is good, but it's sometimes at the expense of real statistical significance. And if you've got a control in direct mail, you're going to stick with it until you know it got beat. Right. And it's got to get beat with. And I'll tell you, some of the CEOs that I've talked to, my mastermind, I've had a bunch of CEOs of digital companies, and you would think, I say, who was the most valuable employee to you? And you would think he would say the marketing person or the CFO. And this guy had a lot of marketing expertise himself, so maybe it would have been the marketing. But he said it's the statistician. It's the guy that gives me the dashboard that says, how is my mailing doing, or how is my online marketing doing? Different packages, how do they do the test? What's the test setup? And if you're calling something a winner over a loser, you got to prove it to me. And he was not a statistician himself as the CEO, but he understood enough to understand it. And I always did too, because if you don't understand it, you don't have to do it. It's not a how, but you got to know the what, and you got to trust your who on this.
Right.
But you got to ask them the right questions.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're out of time. We didn't go into recency, frequency, and monetary value. Is there a resource, a white paper, or article, or a book that you want to recommend?
There are. I mean, my book has a whole chapter basically on it. It's on list building and RFM. I define it. I have a whole thing. I also have a free blog.
So this is an over-deliver.
Over-deliver, yeah. So at overdeliverbook.com, if folks go there, it's a great site. There's like so many bonuses there, and they can get basically it'll give you a button to go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you want to buy it. You go buy it, you come back to the site, and you put your order number in, and you get to download. Talk about Jay Abraham. Jay Abraham, I've got 19 keynotes from Jay Abraham on that site. I've got a swipe file from Dan Kennedy that's exclusive to the Titans of Direct Response event in 2014. I've got a Perry Marshall video of a full day that I did with him in 2013. I've got Gary Bencivenga, one of the greatest copywriters ever, all of his Bencivenga bullets. So it's a great site. I think the bonuses might be better than the book, but the book has a lot.
I'm sure the book is awesome.
Oh, thank you. But you go to the book, and so that's where RFM is defined. But you can also just go to my site, briankurtz.net. I have all my blogs going back, I think, 6 years. Just put in the search bar recency, frequency, or just put RFM, and you'll get a couple of different blog posts, and I can define it and all of that. And that's the best two ways to get on my list as well. I blog every Sunday. I don't really sell in that blog. I don't do affiliates, so it's a content-based blog. I do sell educational products that I own, like the Gene Schwartz books, but it's not a sales thing. It's basically
how did you get the breakthrough advertising rights to publish that book? I mean, that's one of the copywriting legendary books of all time.
It is. Well, the fact is I'm old enough to have known Gene Schwartz for about 20 years. So when I started at Boardroom, he was writing copy for Boardroom, and this is where you don't. This is what I say: you don't choose your mentors choose you. So Gene, well, I tell the story in a blog as well, and I think it's in the book. But Gene asked me off the cuff, because he used to do copy for names. So he would write a package for us, a full-blown package, and in exchange, instead of us paying him, we paid him in names because we had the best health names. And Gene had a small book operation called Instant Improvement, which sold health books. So we used to give him 750,000 Boardroom names of any selection that he wanted if he wrote a package for us. That was the exchange. And he could make a lot more money with 750,000 names than he could if we paid him $50,000 for the package, because it's got lifetime value. He's going to keep the names if they buy the book, and he's going to sell them other books. It's not even close how much more money he made. That's why he was so smart. And so I also saw that with Instant Improvement, his list broker wasn't giving him good recommendations. And I was mailing all the best health books in the country. So on my own, I said, Gene, let me give you a list recommendation. I wasn't a list broker, but I said, I'm going to tell you all the list Boardroom is mailing, the best selections. And I did all of that for him without him asking me. And this is an example of, I had no aspirations that he was going to pay me, because I wasn't doing it for money. And I had no expectation of him doing anything for me. And what he did for me was even more fantastic, which was he started inviting me to his home on Park Avenue for lunches, and just learning at his feet was amazing. He was an amazing art collector, and his apartment on Park Avenue was like a museum. He would change the paintings every couple of months, so you get a whole new, and he had everything in storage. Amazing art collector. In fact, his obituary in the New York Times said, it was like it was one paragraph about him as a copywriter and direct mail guy, and then the rest of it was all about him as an art collector.
Hmm.
So I, because and then I considered him a real mentor. And when he passed away, I went to his, not years after he passed away, because we published small quantities of the book just for friends and family of Boardroom. But then when he passed away, and I left Boardroom and I went to his wife, Barbara, and I had the rights at Boardroom, but I took them with me. But I got a new agreement with Barbara, his wife, and she can't believe the appetite for Gene's work still. I mean, we've sold thousands of copies at the lowest price you can get it for, because it's online anywhere from $300 to $1,000 a copy, and I'm charging $125 for it, and it's a bargain. And so Barbara and I are partners. That's how it happened. That was a long story, but I consider it an honor to be the shepherd of his work, and Barbara trusts me to be a good shepherd, and it's a great partnership, and
that's really cool.
It's been wonderful. Yeah.
And where do you get that book from? Besides
you can
Amazon,
get it on my
course.
site. Yeah, at BrianKurtz.net, there's a products tab, but it's breakthroughadvertisingbook.com. You can go right to that page. But yeah, it's an amazing book. It's like the first 3 chapters of that book are mind-bending. I reread those 3 chapters multiple times a year, but I read the book regularly. And in fact, when I send the book, there's a little letter on it from me that says, read the first 3 chapters multiple times before reading the rest of the book. Yeah. And that's the best way to read it.
Yeah. One of the things I learned from Gene Schwartz was that the headline's job is only to keep the reader reading. That's it. So I used to try and sell through the headline and do all these things, and it just that little nugget allowed me to focus. And I said that so many times to clients and colleagues and stuff, that it's just keep the person reading. That's
right. It's like, what's the purpose of every sentence in a sales letter? Is to get them to read the next sentence.
Yeah.
And people say, long or short. Well, just don't be boring, And if not too long, too short's not the question. So that's shrewd, because that was Gene. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Brilliance Breakthrough I have as well, which was even more obscure than Breakthrough Advertising, and that book is more about how Gene wrote. I mean, he has a thing in there about grammar is overrated, but picking the right words for what you're writing is the most important thing. And that's why I did the workbook, because it's like Mad Libs for copywriting in a way. But I have people who bought that book for their kids, because it's a way to learn to write, maybe like Gene or maybe not, but just to, you don't have to pick the toughest word all the time. You want to pick the words that your audience uses. There's a quote from Gene. He said, there is your reader, there is the language, there are the words that they use. And that summarized what he thought about in terms of the words you use to reach your audience.
Right. Very powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Again, your website is BrianKurtz.net. And all those book websites, will include all those in the show notes.
Oh, thank you, Steph.
Yeah, and I do hope that our listener goes and buys some of those books, because they can really that can catapult somebody's career. It really can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about direct marketing education. It's not about the money. In fact, I don't offer them on Amazon. I'm not looking to maximize income. I'm looking to maximize education and share all this stuff as much as I can for as long as I'm here. Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, thank you again, Brian. Thank you, listener. Now take advantage of these amazing resources, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Marketing Speak.